It was the kind of televised takedown that had the entire entertainment world gaping in utter shock and disbelief. America's perpetual sweetheart Taylor Swift unloading with both bare-knuckled fists on her former BFF and woman of the people, inspiration Meghan Markle. For over an hour on Jimmy Kimmel Live, the normally guarded pop superstar went full-tilt Cobra, striking at the Duchess' character, credibility, and alleged raging narcissistic tendencies. Maybe it was the backlash of Tay feeling burned by her Sussex comrades' perceived plunge into tone-deaf privilege and hypocrisy after leaving behind the royal family's lace-trimmed shackles. Or perhaps the final straw stemmed from the vitriolic tides of body-shaming Meghan's loyal stands unleashed after some recent pap shots surfaced of Swift's pandemic curves during a beachside getaway. But regardless of the impetus, one conclusion was unmistakable after the Kimmel brouhaha. Miss Americana's sweetly earnest public persona has finally been bulldozed to pave way for a merciless new era. The velvet-roped boundaries of Hollywood royal watching will likely never recover. You know, it really didn't have to go this far off the rails. I actually used to consider that shameless Wookiee one of my closest friends and mentors. Swift seethed from the Kimmel couch with barely contained disgust, prompting slack-jawed responses from the studio audience only just settling in for typical celebrity banter. But anyone blindly respecting whatever ragefest manifesto that delusional narco pushes clearly hasn't witnessed her full toxic mania up close before. Leaning in with heightened venom more characteristic of a Real Housewives reunion than whimsical late-night television, Swift was only just getting warmed up berating her former royal pal. Almost immediately, she recalibrated her crosshairs towards picking apart the carefully curated public branding campaigns Meghan leveraged to transcend the firm's archaic hierarchies and stake out her role as a global humanitarian luminary. At first it seemed so noble, right? Yet another crusading multiracial Angelino fearlessly slashing through that calcified UK race courtier in her chic Lululemon ensembles, Swift mused with dripping sarcasm. But in retrospect, there were so many red neon-lighted Vegas Boulevard warning signs that this Compton Cali mommy was just one more thirsty Hollywood grifter with an insatiable viper lust for snatching any spotlight in reaching distance. Turning to Kimmel for backup in disemboweling the woke persona she now accused Meghan of pantomiming, Swift seized upon the former Deal or No Deal briefcase bimbo's own idealized origin story as the child of a hardscrabble single mom working multiple jobs to castigate as fabricated humblebrag fan fiction. And she didn't spare the sharpest criticisms over Markle's alleged antics alienating Kensington Palace staff. So let me get this straight, this chick was raised as an upper-middle-class valley kid living a fairly cushy suburban existence in Woodland Hills, and she somehow had the nerve to rebrand herself as America's next great ghetto Cinderella success story? Taylor scoffed, rapidly gaining momentum as the audience audibly gasped. Then she gets a brief whiff of real aristocratic breeding, only to immediately start terrorizing the royal family's overworked servants like some Silicon Becky yakking about her basic bish latte orders not getting foamed to the proper pretentious measurements. With Kimmel clearly unnerved and momentarily struggling to rein in his guest's runaway contretemps, Taylor only leaned harder into her uncorked character dismantling of the former princess. She then began mercilessly skewering the countless contradictions and alleged obfuscations tangled within the Sussexes' heavily scripted public appeals for sympathy since their defection. So she's spending all these years love-bombing Oprah and whatnot with this performance pity party about just craving the life of a regular suburban mom borrowing butter from neighbors, then immediately pivots into conning the world's angriest woke bros into subsidizing her third Salt Lick castle in Montecito or wherever, the songstress rapid-fired to Kimmel's visible discomfort. It's truly the most galaxy-brained branding strategy since the Fire Fest with that grifting laundry butt boy. As the studio audience clearly wavered between stunned silence and nervous titters, Swift seemed to pause only momentarily to collect herself and offer at least some pretense of balance and fair play. But even her half-hearted effort to reel the rancor back in only further descended into mocking verbal uppercuts aimed below the Duchess' presumably taut midsection. Look, I'll admit, maybe like 15% of the marginalization yarns she keeps massively overselling in these quasi-periodical televised shivists could possibly contain some shreds of actual truth, she conceded. But also didn't Meg skip off and abandon her first husband roughly the same way she did the royal fam, too? While having fertilized 0 children with that poor schmuck. So basically that makes her just another vapid Hollywood wife walker. What could have possibly possessed the otherwise supremely disciplined pop icon to derail her career brandishing so spectacularly off-rails remains a matter of fevered speculation. But the path towards reputational scorched earth appeared both premeditated and deeply personal for Swift. That much was evident when she next escalated her animus to astonishing character assassination levels as Jimmy Kimmel haplessly fumbled in vain for commercial reprieve. At this point, I wouldn't put it past this gutter bunny fake humanitarian to have fully hoaxed even her two clowned royal spawns into the world, the singer snarled with extra venom, prompting shrieks from scandalized audience members. The way that thirst bunny's constantly churning drama for publicity, she may have just straight up stolen those poppets out of some Malbo hospital newborn pod to prop up all these publicity crisis pregnancies. From that point, the shock and venom crescendoed into such a combustible bouillabaisse of bald-faced character assassination that Jimmy Kimmel was left with no alternative but to forcibly wrap the interview and unceremoniously usher the superstar off his set. A visibly enraged Taylor could still be heard railing about Princess Problematic committing transracial birth desecrations in the background as Kimmel strained to reassure his studio audience they hadn't actually witnessed a full-fledged public breakdown. "I want to sincerely apologize for what everyone was just subjected to here," Kimmel gasped to the dismayed crowd. Whatever real or imagined grievances Taylor convinced herself warranted that kind of shockingly unfiltered verbal assaulting is clearly no excuse to bring an entire studio audience into her personal psychodrama like that. In the aftermath, the collateral damage on Swift's reputation was nothing short of cataclysmic throughout elite industry ranks. Disney CEO Bob Chapek publicly denounced her irredeemable toxic narcissism on corporate social channels, while Apple hastily suspended its $350 million blanket greenlighting of future Taylor-led projects. Her longtime PR strategist and confidant Tree Payne resigned via a scathing split-pick manifesto, accusing Swift's depraved limelight loathing of precipitating irreversible trauma from the depths of her blackest abyss. As the controversy metastasized across global entertainment coverages, Prince Harry was even compelled into an awkward statement expressing both bemusement and disappointment at being dragged into Swift's deranged tirade against his wife. While unsure of the precise origins motivating these exaggerated invectives, the Duke feels great sadness that he and the Duchess have somehow been caught in this maelstrom of hatred and ill-tempered resentment, read the terse palace missive before dryly concluding. Needless to say, both nobles wish Miss Swift and her representation every restoration of wellness soon. For her part, Meghan Markle declined public comment on the debacle beyond several artful shrugs and dry chuckles aired during her next call-in to the How I Built Resilience podcast on Goop TV. The Duchess.